tell us your name? Did you live here? Did you die here? Do you want to take a trip? Hello, folks, and welcome again to Strange Journeys. I'm Tom Roush, your ghost host, and our very special guest, Elizabeth Parker, back with us again. We're going to be talking to her in depth today. One of our ETs, Lewis, just sent me a message. He's trying to get all his camera and everything set up, so he's trying to get it right now. And we're having an issue with Facebook at the moment, and I don't know. I'm looking at it on Facebook, trying to get it to stream, and just as I went live, it said, okay, there's a problem with Facebook. So it's like, great, thanks. But we are live on YouTube and Twitch. So hopefully we can get some folks watching us there. And we're going on anyway. We do every time. And just remember that we provide these shows first and foremost for you, the watchers, for your entertainment. We are not by any means and do not claim to be scholars and experts in the topics we cover. We're simply enthusiasts and storytellers who have fun with these topics while doing our best to respect individual beliefs. And please remember that we are live, obviously. Facebook going down and I can't fix it. And nothing is rehearsed or edited out later. What you see is what you get. Now, another caveat to that is the service that we use, StreamYard, has just opened up last week or week before last, the option of uploading pre-recorded videos and broadcast them at a certain date. And so last Saturday, we had our first Strange Journeys Revisited show where we went back and I edited down a little bit our very first Strange Journeys live stream and rebroadcast it. So that's the only editing that's going to be done. These that come at you live like this will go on YouTube and Facebook and just stay the way they were broadcast until it rolls around time for them to be on the revisited section. But speaking of, next Saturday will be another special rebroadcast of our second ever live stream show. Last week was Personnel Paranormal, where there was four or five of us on there, shared our very first or our most poignant paranormal experience. And Tommy shared about experiencing sleep paralysis and seeing the Black Hat Man. Dagny shared about seeing a blue orb that she believed was her guardian angel. Who else was on there? Yeah, Tim shared about his doppelganger experience where he was actually ghost hunting in a cemetery with a doppelganger. So that was pretty wild. Lynn shared about when I took her on an investigation to the Kennedy building in downtown Mobile, where she had something speak to her. She didn't hear it at the time, but when we went back and listened to the recorder, she had this uneasy feeling, said, I got to get out of here. And right after that, on the recorder, you hear the word Allah. Oh. Of course, it was a Seaman's Bethel at one time where sailors from around the world would stay there. Mm-hmm. So That was pretty wild. And I shared my experience of seeing a full-bodied apparition at my grandfather's barn. So you need to go back and watch that. It is on YouTube and on Facebook. Okay, there's Lewis. Hey, Lewis.
Hello.
Sitting there in the shadows.
Sorry I'm late.
It's okay.
I wish the lighting were better in this room.
Oh, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you missed it on our MUFON show where we're doing MUFON stories. He was sitting there regally and had these two lamps on either side of him, and he just looked so powerful and omniscient.
That's setting the bar pretty high, Lewis.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Sorry.
That was good. All right. We're going to go into last week's show. Facebook is still not. Okay, I'm sorry. Facebook is still not clicking in. I may have to just upload all this to Facebook later, which we'll do that. Our previous live show, I was talking about our in-between shows, the Strange Journeys Revisited last week, and then next week will be our second show, Personnel Paranormal, where the remaining members of the ETs share their most profound or first paranormal experience. But on the previous live show, it was called Violence in Villisca on June 10th, 1912. Is my mind going blank? There was some horrific axe murders, and Tim and I went over those, and there's a book came out called The Man on the Train that Tim was telling us about, where there was a possibility of this vagrant, I guess you'd call him, just traveling around the country. And when they look back, the MO was the same in some previous axe murders and some following as the Villisca murders. So I don't know. But as we were getting ready for the show, I mentioned it to Elizabeth, and she said she wanted to do a reading about it. And I asked her to share what she came up with.
Well, I did do a reading on it, and it's appropriate for this show because if I were going to go out and participate in an investigation, this is the same thing I would do before I went out to investigate a local or a current property or some haunted location. I do a lot of prep work with a lot of meditation and working with the cards. I read tarot. And when I'm working with the cards, then I also get a lot of insights and things that come to me when I'm in that headspace. So I did a mini reading on Villisca, which is one of my favorite unsolved crimes. I'm really fascinated with it. I thought that I knew a lot about it, and I sort of expected the reading to confirm what I already knew. But I got some really weird stuff that changed how I looked at it. And I'll just share that. I won't go on in detail, and I'm assuming that people know the basics of the murder. If you don't, then this is going to not mean anything to you. But
well, they go back and watch the other show.
Go back and watch the show. I initially, when I'm getting my reading and getting oriented to the energy that's still there, because there's no past, present, and future. Energy is energy. Nothing disappears. So I was able to tap into that energy. The craziest thing to me was just the reading on the father in the family, Joe Moore. Mm-hmm. What I got on him was that his life was an absolute mess, a mess.
Wow.
That his business, his private affairs, everything was a mess. We'd always heard that he was catting around and he had some ladies on the side and a love affair and all that. I got that it went so far beyond that, that's what really sparked everything, that it was more of business and personal dealings that he was into and some business stuff that had gone very, very wrong, and he couldn't fix it. And he had run very afoul of somebody, but it wasn't, the love affair was like the cherry on top of the sundae. And in my reading, what I got was that Joe Moore wasn't even, the carrying on and the love affair was no big deal to him. That was sort of a sideline thing. But to someone else, that affair was that was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. So I got that it was a hit on Joe Moore. It was a hit on Josiah Moore, and that it was carried out by a professional, by someone who absolutely knew, was exactly the kind of person you were going to hire if you were going to take somebody out.
Right.
And in a little town where everybody knows everybody and everybody sees everybody, the only time you can really get to someone is if you sneak in their house at night and do it. That's the only time you're going to be undetected.
Yeah.
Not like you can take them down in an alley and nobody will know. So I felt like, from my reading and my psychic hits, was that the professional did go in there and he took out Joe Moore. The wife had to go because she was a witness. But I don't think the man that ordered the hit knew that the children were going to be taken out. And I think the children were taken out solely because the murderer enjoyed it and it made him feel very strong and powerful. And he just did it because he could. I don't think they were ever meant to be killed. I think he did the deed and he got out. But I think that creeping around was our friend Reverend Kelly.
Yeah.
Who appears on the scene. And Reverend Kelly has the hair's standing up on end as I talk about this.
Oh, he's creepy.
He's creepy, and he has exactly the kind of background of a creepy person who would follow a family with 4 children home, if you know what I'm saying here. And I felt overwhelmingly that Reverend Kelly was creeping around. He came upon this, and that it was Reverend Kelly who got in that house afterward and covered the windows, covered the mirrors, played with the bodies a little bit, dragged the bacon around, and just spent time in the house with those bodies before he finally had to leave, and he locked the door behind him and he left. So
you're saying, I'm sorry, just to clarify, one person murdered him.
Yeah.
And then Kelly came in after because he was just creeping around. Okay.
Yeah. I think he was creeping around looking for an opportunity to peep on people, which was his thing. And then later his ability to write a confession and talk with some knowledge of the crime scene.
Fluently. Yeah.
I think he was in there. I got very strongly that he was in there. I don't think he did it, but yeah, I think he was in that crime scene. Now, whether this hired killer who did it was copycatting or went on to do any of the awful murders that were going around the Midwest at that time, I don't know. And then, of course, the axe. I mean, axe is a household object. If you're a serial killer or someone who likes that kind of thing, axe is easy. It's quiet.
Yeah.
You don't have to carry it around. You know you're going to find one in every household.
Right.
So I know the modus operandi of the serial killer who was going around whacking people up is very similar. But I think the what I got made me broaden my view a little bit of what might have happened from what I was initially thinking. Yeah. So that was my reading on it. If we were really doing this for real and I were in Villisca planning a trip, I would read beforehand, and I would read several times and amass kind of a psychic database. And then I would want to take that and go to the house because there's a different feel. You can get a lot of stuff remotely, but then when you're in the location, that's different. You tap into a whole different kind of line of information.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so that's what I got on Villisca, just to throw that into the mix of possibilities.
Wow, that is amazing.
So can you explain exactly, I know you mentioned you were dealing with tarot cards and you were also doing meditation. So is all of this coming from both of those experiences combined?
Yes.
And did you do any remote viewing?
Yes. I could see, I could see, it was like I was looking out of Kelly's eyes. That was what really startled me was go, I'm right here. I'm right here. I know what's happened. I felt him. Wow. I jumped him a little bit in his energy to go in. Now, I don't believe that the house is haunted. I agree with Tim and Tom. I think it's like the Star Trek holodeck. I think when the investigators, the well-meaning visitors and investigators who go in there read it. I think anyone who is sensitive is simply reading the residual energy of the crime that's imprinted at the time of the event. They're reading the residual energy. And then I think the other PK stuff that happens where the ball rolls across the floor or dolls get moved or things like that. I think that that's PK generated by the investigators who go in there with so much knowledge of what happened and anticipatory expectations and genuine hopes that they will pick stuff up that they can work with, that they're looking for data. So I think that unintentionally, there's a lot of generating the events that happen in the house.
Well, if you remember, the people in the town, it's reported they don't see it as a haunted house.
Right.
Whereas Lizzie Borden, everybody around, that's haunted. You know, I mean, but in Villisca, it's just the murder house. Now, Tim came across the only, I guess you could say, citizen of the town that said anything remotely paranormal. And when he was interviewing that old lady that had actually been 8 years old and friends of the kids that got murdered, she said later in life she saw shades. And then, well, let me back up. After the murder, they would see lights in the house. And it seems like in Villisca, that's the only reported even close to paranormal activity, you know. So, and of course, Tim has actually investigated there and says they got nothing at all the whole time they were there.
Right.
So, and we closed out the show, and I was reminded of what you had said about, you know, Native American burial grounds and things like that, that just because something may have happened there doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be haunted.
Right.
And when I'd asked you on an earlier show, why do people get evidence in cemeteries? And your response was because of the emotional status of us, the living, that come in there.
Right. The living leave
We
an
bring
emotional
it.
imprint. Yeah. The living leave an emotional imprint just as
Excuse me.
the non-physical energies leave
Right.
an imprint. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, that's amazing. I wish you could have been on the show. We should have had you on the show. That's cool. All right. Well, we're going to leave Villisca, and we may have to come back to it later. But we just appreciate you being here. We're still having Facebook difficulties. I can't figure that out. So I just went over and asked people to watch on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. And the other day I was watching something, or last weekend, I was watching something on YouTube, and my grandson was over at the house, and I realized that he'd been watching a lot of YouTube because this is what I got him to do.
Click that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.
I'm sorry, I didn't play it twice. Was that a Freudian slip, I think?
That's adorable.
Isn't it, though? And what's funny is we were just watching, like I said, I know I was watching videos on empaths and psychics and mediums and things like that. And it may have been one of those, or I had just finished a series of on a podcast I listened to of the Patterson-Gimlin film. And so I was watching some videos related to that too. So it could have been any of those. And he just spoke up what you just heard. And I'm like, what? You've been watching YouTube too much. And then later on that evening, when his mom came to pick him up, he added to it about, and click the little bell to sign up for notifications. And I'm like, what? Well, come on, you didn't add that on mine, So anyway, I may have to get him to do another one where you click the bell. But anyway, I may have to attach that to the end of my other YouTube videos. So it'll just play right through. But yeah, I've been posting that. That was the TikTok video I made of it. So it was pretty cool. And but please do, if you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, all that good stuff. And we do need help. And if you could help us produce this show, we would certainly appreciate it. Oh, wait, before I do that, we got some new subscribers this week. Elizabeth, thank you. She subscribed to our YouTube channel. And I had just gotten some notification about some of these other folks. You saw Lee Peacock there. And these are just some of the new subscribers on YouTube. We certainly appreciate it. But Lee Peacock, he and Jonathan Odom are going to be joining us, I think it's in October, for a show about some more Bigfoot sightings. So Lee Peacock writes about it. If you see the Prime video called The Town That Loved Bigfoot about Evergreen, Alabama, that's where Lee Peacock lives, and he's featured on that film. They interview him a good bit, but he's been interviewing and research folk in that area for a while now. And of course, Jonathan Odom has Alabama Bigfoot and Paranormal, and he actually goes out into the woods and searches for the Alabama White Thing and whatever else may be out there. So we've already got them booked for a show. Like I said, I think it's in October. But if you could help us produce this show, we would certainly appreciate it. And you can sign up for as little as $3 a month. There's our Patreon page, and you can be a strange pal for $3, strange buddies for $5, strange friends for $10, strange partners for $25 a month, and strange producers for $30. Now you get swag and special deals for each level. So we would certainly appreciate it if you could help us out there. Now, I want to get on into the strange sightings and get that out of the way. That sounds bad because this is a staple of our show. I mean, we love doing the strange sightings. But the strange sightings file this week is a little different. And you'll see why in just a second. It's not necessarily, well, I wouldn't call it paranormal, but it is strange. Are you ready for this? Now, I know everybody expects, that's been watching the show for a while, something paranormal. But when I came across that, I was just blown away. I was like, that fits the strange sightings. But I don't think it's a cryptid. I mean, here's just some screenshots of the video. But what'd y'all think?
It looks like a species of dolphin that they ended up somehow cramming into this video to make it look like it was found in this pipe.
Yeah, they cut away.
Yeah.
There's a cut after
Yeah.
it plunges. You go from being in the well to just being in murky water. So I think it's a fake. I mean, I think the shot is a fake. The critter is amazing and interesting, but I don't think they found it down a well.
Well, even if they did, I mean, well, let me just read this. I think it's an Amazon River dolphin because it's just said in a village well. The Amazon River dolphin is a group of dolphins that primarily dwell in the South American waters, especially in the Amazon River, also known as the pink river dolphin or the boto. They are not to be confused with the marine pink dolphins. This water mammal is the largest of all the other river dolphin species. Now, to me, this looks kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's what it is. Whether it was actually down in the water vein, I guess, or not. The amazing thing to me is the animal, the dolphin.
Agreed.
I just think that is just so amazing, and it's not something you see every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, from down here where we live, we have dolphins, but they're saltwater. And these are freshwater, you know, and that's what's so amazing to me. But if you'll look, he's got that ridge on his back, and you see that same ridge in this picture. So I think that's what the video is showing. It is a very distant relative to the sea dolphin. It has a pink to pinkish gray pigmentation on their bodies, and it's given them a very unique appearance. It's the only river dolphin that is kept in captivity, mostly in the USA, Venezuela, and Europe. However, the rate of mortality is high amongst the captive specimens. Again, and I knew it wasn't paranormal when I picked it. I just thought it was strange and cool. Mm-hmm. And it fit the strange sightings file. But like I mean, even if it was a cut it, edit, you know, and splice that in, I still think it was cool. That thing nosing up to whatever camera it was on. Mm-hmm. But that'll be on our Patreon. I'm kind of behind on the Patreon files because of the personal stuff that's been going on in my life the past couple of months. But I will be catching up soon, and that'll be going on Patreon, because remember, once we play the sightings files on here, they go on Patreon, and that's the only way you can view them again. All right. Today we've set aside to talk another ghost hunting show and dive a little deeper into one aspect of it that is just now starting to become recognizable, or a recognized portion of the ghost hunting show experience. Empaths, mediums, psychics, clairvoyants, seers, prophets, and their kin throughout history have divined the unknown and the unseen. They have peered into the abyss of the supernatural and the paranormal. After seeing, hearing, and sometimes interpreting, they share their findings with those that would listen. With the relatively recent popularity of ghost hunting or paranormal investigations, some have begun to return to these ancient techniques to enhance their results. Please remember as we proceed that these are real people and not tools to be used in our ghost hunting endeavors. We want to highlight their strengths and weaknesses as important team members on any investigation team. First, we want to see if they are all one and the same, or are there differences in what they do, how they approach investigations, and how they respond to manifestations. And secondly, we want to focus on specific situations where you might need someone with certain gifts. And finally, we want to highlight how you would determine if you might be an empath, medium, psychic, or just someone who is open to the other realms. And we've invited our very special guest, frequent special guest, Elizabeth Parker, back with us, who is a practicing psychic medium. And before we get too deep into this, I wanted to show you, she has her YouTube channel, Polly's Fancy European Tarot. And she does, just tell us a little bit about that real quick, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, Polly is a funny way of doing real tarot. And it came out of this last year when everybody was exhausted and tired. And I initially started it for fun, but it quickly became something much more serious in terms of doing weekly energy readings and readings around the energies of the full and the new moon, in an effort to use Polly, who is a character, she's from Europe, in a funny way, but still to bring tarot to people who maybe didn't have a lot to do with tarot, or who didn't understand it, or just a funny way to it's funny, it's real serious funny tarot.
Good. Okay. Real serious funny tarot. Okay. Excellent. All right. And also she has 3 books out, which we've talked about those on here before, and you can find those on Amazon. And Elizabeth, I've wanted to ask about that last one down there. Is that your book?
What is that? I can't, it's tiny and I can't see it.
Managing Your Organization's Records?
Oh, good God, no.
Okay, so they must. What is Amazon doing here? Just do that. Okay, just ignore that one down there with the blue and just ignore that one. Oh, yeah, Mobile Ghost 2, The Waterline, and Haunted Mobile, which is a compilation of some of the other stories. Mm-hmm. So if you want the complete, you would get her 2 books. And that's everything. And the Haunted Mobile is just selected stories from each of those books, correct?
The Haunted Mobile, the publishers approached me and wanted me to just pull the stories that were about haunted houses specifically. So just the haunted houses, not the other businesses or properties or things like that. Right. That's what's in Haunted Mobile.
That's right. I remember you saying that. I'm sorry. I've got it. But I've read both of these, so I haven't. I've already read the stories. So, but you're right. Okay. All right. Well, we wanted to kind of start with defining these people. And we want to eventually get to the point where we talk about how they function in a ghost hunt. But first off, Elizabeth, as you are one, as my daddy used to say, you are one. How do you define, and is it broken down into categories, or how does this function? Because we've always heard of fortune tellers and empaths or mediums, psychic mediums, clairvoyant. We hear all these different terms. Is it all different or one? I don't know.
I think the terminologies come in when you're trying to highlight certain categories or certain specific gifts. Right. But to put it in a broad sense, I think everybody has the same ability to be intuitive and to use this. The sixth sense is the easiest way to talk about having that extra sense, which is not really, to me, even an extra sense. It's all of your senses working on a different channel. When you're receiving, you're a big receiver. And you have your dial attuned maybe to some different channels that the people that don't work with these things have.
Right.
But you don't have to be a professional psychic to be very intuitive and to be sensitive and to be an empath. That's one of the biggest things. An empath is a person whose psychic sensitivity or their ability to be receptive and pick up vibrations and frequencies and energies from places and people. And often empaths are considered to be just highly sensitive people, as if that's a weakness, because they can be so influenced by it. When you walk into say a crowded place, like a crowded grocery store or a crowded sports venue or something, and after a few minutes you are ready to climb the walls, you have to get out of there. It's because it's not because you're weak or overly sensitive. It's just you literally are feeling everything. You're feeling everybody else's stuff.
Wow.
And if you can, I think a lot of people may have the experience of, I was having a perfectly good day, and then suddenly I walked into the meeting or the store or the location, and I was in a horrible mood. I felt angry. I felt sad. I didn't understand. It's because you're picking up other people's stuff. And we're never taught to work with our more sensitive, intuitive gifts to protect ourselves and to be able to function properly in the world. So everybody has it to a certain degree, but people either turn it off because it's not acceptable in their culture to be sensitive, or they can't deal with it, so they turn it off, or they don't understand it, so they don't even realize they have it, or in some cases it's just turned up so high and you're so dialed in to picking up other vibrations and frequencies that you can't ignore it, so you accept it and it becomes part of what you work with. Then it really is a sixth sense.
Right. Now, would this be a word I heard, and this is not referring back to the show on fairies that we did, but I heard a term that the Scottish use, the fae. Not in relation to fairies, but in relation to this sense.
Yeah, they'll talk about people and they'll say that they'll describe someone as being fae.
Yeah.
And that means that they're dialed into an otherworldly realm. They're sensing a different reality, which is what being sensitive or psychic is that you sense other levels of reality and a lot of unseen and non-physical reality. So
it could include the fairy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just
well, I mean, for me, yeah. For normal people, I don't know. But like I told you, it's like I told you before the show started, Tom, this is my normal.
Right.
So I forget that other people may not experience it the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is what you said. We cut it off. And I mean, most people that know me or know my history know that I came from a spiritual background, but it was all a Christianity based. And this kind of thing was taboo.
Right.
You know, I mean, you could have spirituality, you could be a spiritual person, but it had to be the Holy Spirit, it had to be angels, it had to be the presence of God, and they left no room. Not that I'm condemning that. Please understand, I'm not condemning that. But in my circles, it was all still in a box.
Right, but it couldn't be shut down. It had to be acknowledged in some way. So it was culturally appropriate and acceptable to filter it through. You know, I was in prayer and I felt that God spoke to me, or I was in church and the music transported me. My spirit was just lifted and I felt it.
Exactly.
So we find ways that are culturally appropriate for the language that we're set up to speak, to express these higher vibrations and frequencies in a way that's comfortable for our cultural group.
Well, and a term that they don't like in churches is mystics. In which, in my research, I found out mystics are just basically spiritual people that are striving for a higher connection spiritually. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right. You're seeking the mystical experience outside of human experience so that you can grow your soul understanding and expand your connection to the divine.
Now, interesting along these lines of Christianity and sensitivity. I've done 2 investigations with a paranormal team that is it's an entire family, and the patriarch of this family is a Pentecostal preacher. And his family is entirely Pentecostals.
Oh, wow.
But what was fascinating, and I come from a very mainstream Methodist upbringing, so I've always been brought up to believe that these people were a little outside of the mainstream. But during the course of the investigation, at one point, one of the young ladies started saying, "I got something on my back." And when she's saying this, we're on an elevator, and her grandmother looks over and just starts speaking in tongues, and then begins swatting at her granddaughter's back. I'm standing there witnessing this in an elevator thinking, oh my God, I've never seen this before. And it was absolutely incredible. But what was so interesting was how they tied their own beliefs into ghost hunting and into their sensitivities. And it turned out that I think most of the females involved in this investigation were all sensitive in some way.
Nice.
And I think that's particularly interesting, especially being that they're all female. And if you really look at history, it's the females who often are the ones attacked for being sensitive. And then, of course, there are accusations of witchcraft and so forth.
No, not witchcraft.
So
well, they're filtering it. Yeah, exactly, Lewis. They're filtering it through what's culturally the framework that allows them to express their intuitive gifts. Yeah. So they're speaking Pentecostal. And you have to do that when you're going to be, if you're working in the paranormal field as an empath or a medium or a psychic, you have to be sensitive to people's cultural language. You have to be really fluid in talking to people so that you can present stuff to them in a language that they understand, so that it makes sense to them. Yeah. I mean, you gotta talk to people in the language they understand.
That is perfect. So basically what we're saying is it comes down to terminology. If we're open to it. Now, like I said, my background initially was all this was taboo. And what's funny is since I walked away from all that, and I've been asked if I still have my fire insurance paid. And I've had to tell them, say, look, I'm the same guy. I've not changed my belief system. I've just expanded my belief system. I haven't taken anything away. I've just added to it. I realized I could be open to whatever and still learn truth and find truth. But it's been amazing to me where you from years back, you'd be in some of these prayer meetings or church services, and some of the things you would see, like you said, I think Lewis just alluded to it too, somebody, God spoke to me, or here's a word of the Lord, and that kind of thing. And then you get on an investigation and somebody say, I keep hearing this words, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing, but it's just how we package it, or like you said, how we filter it. So are empaths different than mediums different than psychics different than clairvoyance?
It's kind of it's kind of all things. The lines get blurred. The traditional thought is that a medium specifically speaks with the dead, with the deceased. And a medium is usually psychic, but a psychic is not necessarily a medium. A psychic who can do a psychic reading for you can pick up on energy surrounding you and pick up what's amassing and what's in energetic potential. And like when I read tarot for someone, I am picking up on the energetic building blocks that are assembling to create a certain outcome. And if that continues in that way, then the outcome will be in that way. But you can change that, because you can change the building blocks. Right. There's no such thing as, you talked about fortune tellers. A fortune teller is different than what I do. I always tell people I'm not a fortune teller. I am not a fortune teller. I'm not here to tell you what's going to happen to you in the future, because the future is completely fluid and you're in charge of your future. You can change it at any point. It's up to you. When you get into the more specific categorizations of sensitives or intuitive people or psychics or mediums, you talk about clairaudient or claircognizance or clairvoyance. That's simply a French term that means, for example, clairvoyance means clear seeing. And that's when you have pictures either in your head or you'll see something out in the physical. People always wonder how you can do that, but I can explain it so simply. If while we were talking right now, I asked you to think about a Christmas tree, you could have the image of a Christmas tree in your head while still having your eyes open and talking with me, right? You don't have to see a Christmas tree. You don't have to go, you can get that image in your head and still be awake and functioning and have your eyes open. And that's similar to when you're clairvoyant and you see things. Claircognizance is when you know things. And to me, that's the hardest one to perfect, because believing in yourself and having the confidence to say, I know this person was shot. I know this person walked with a limp. I know this person had intent for this, because you just know it and you don't know where it came from. It's just there. Clairaudient is when you hear voices either in your head or physically in your ear or in your environment. Clairsentient is when you feel things. Clairsentience can be like when I'm somewhere in a location and I connect with a ghost and I know they were sick, because I immediately in my body, I feel very ill. I know how they walked. It's like I take on their characteristics. My body mimics what they were doing. So those are the big ones. There's other minor clairs that are less, people talk about less, like being able to smell things.
Right.
And that's so common when you go on an investigation and for homeowners, and they'll say, I smell coffee all the time. I don't know where it comes from, or I smell perfume, or when you do a clearing of a house, if you're with someone who's very religious, if you were working with people of Catholic faith or Orthodox faith and you cleared a house successfully, they might smell roses, or they might smell incense, or things connected to their faith. Yeah. So it's kind of all of pieces of a whole. But whatever psychic gift you have, whether you're empathic, which means you're able to really understand how someone else is feeling, or you're a working medium, or you do what I do, which is my mediumship is based on helping people with ghost problems. Yeah, I'm not a kind of medium that will tap into your Uncle Fred and ask where the will is, or, I'm not doing that.
Well, I like the way you put it before, ghosts with people problems.
Yes, I do ghosts with people problems, because there's just so much confusion and misunderstanding. So that's where I'm focused. But your psychic gift, whether you do what I do, which is fully using it, or you adapt it into ways that you may not even be conscious of, your gift is going to be perfectly tailored to what your life plan is and what your work is going to be in the world. Maybe you run a business and you have to deal with customers, or you're a professional where you're dealing one-on-one with people. If you have empathic gifts, if you recognize and learn to work with them, you're going to be so much better at your job, because you can really get into that other person's experience, and it will heighten your ability to do your job well and create a good experience for people.
That's amazing. You were saying that. I mentioned before we went on the air that we don't, like you said, we kind of push this down in our society and even in our lives where we don't focus on these. And I know that I mean, me personally, I don't focus on these things. But that being said, there are times, and I've turned to Lynn. We walk into a restaurant or something, and I know that I'm going to see somebody I know, and I'll turn to Lynn and say, somebody's here that I know. And then the next thing you turn around and there's so and so, an old friend or something. And that's happened to me more times than I can count. I mean, it's happened to me all of my adult life. And then you mentioned the smells. I had went on a ghost hunt one night to a restaurant down in Theodore, and we did 2 nights. The first night we didn't experience much, and I took my oldest stepdaughter Amber, with us, and Lynn was back at my place waiting for us to get through, and she was sitting there on my computer doing Facebook or playing games or something, and she smelled White Shoulders perfume. She said it was strong and overpowering. Well, this was before we got married. I lived by myself. There hadn't been anybody over there, especially with White Shoulders. I can't stand it. That's just me. But I mean, I'm at the point where I don't like any colognes or perfumes or anything like that anymore. But anyway, it just messes with my sinuses. But her first thought was, I think it was her a previous in-law or grandmother, something like that she was really close to, that had passed on several years ago. And that's what it made her think of.
Right. It's so much easier for non-physical spirits to get in touch with us, even when you're a psychic medium or a psychic reader, or you're working in mediumship. It's so much easier. It's like playing charades, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a symbol like a smell, which will connect you instantly, because smell is, I think, our strongest, earliest memory. And so anything that makes you leap to an immediate connection, that your brain doesn't have time to analyze and edit. Like when you see a picture or a vision or an image, you immediately get something, or you smell it, you immediately get a feeling. You've made that big leap across your left brain into your right brain, where you're simply making connections with symbols. And that's the fastest, easiest way for the non-physical vibration to connect with us in the physical.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I know I am, me personally, visually oriented, but also, if I can pronounce it right, aurally, aurally, with sound, being a musician, I have to see it, and then music affects me differently than some people. Now, we've talked about the different types of these sensitives. Is that a good word to use, kind of across the board, for people who are open to this?
As good as any.
Okay. Well, let's put it, people that focus on these gifts, because well, some of us, and I'm including myself in this, may have those sensitivities from time to time, but I know I haven't focused on it. And it's not that I'm, just pushing it aside. It's just, I don't think about it. I mean, so, and again, it's not judging the gift or what I'm sensing. It's just, I know I would have to consciously focus on it more. And I have in the past, where I did for a long time, and then I walked away from it. But that's a story for another day. What are some of the, I guess you could say, manifestations or gifts? I listed some in our outline, but just if you could go over some of the different ways that these, I mean, you've talked about your senses and the different clairvoyance and claircognizant and clairsentience, but some of the things in pop culture that we think of are ESP, telepathy, telekinesis. Is all that? I mean, in other words, how can these gifts manifest?
Well, we come from such a science-based culture. Western culture is completely science-based. So anytime you can dress something up and call it science and not mysticism, you're doing pretty well. So a lot of the, for example, the very famously known super secret, not so secret remote viewing that is supposed to be allegedly taught in higher levels of some of the CIA and stuff like that for spying. That was dressing it up and making it like science, where you could get people in a lab and in a very, very controlled lab setting and train them to use their brains. Anything that's brain training, you can train your brain to remote view, use that left brain and go out and do remote viewing or do ESP or bend spoons like Uri Geller or something like that. That's been the most acceptable entree into pop culture, I think, that we've had in our lifetimes. It's very different now. But that's also why I think the earliest investigative teams that started researching the paranormal and being on TV and were popularly accepted were so against using mediums or psychics in their investigations, because they were trying to be very scientific and gathered data, which is great, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. That's only one side of the coin. But when you start bringing in gifts and talents and information that cannot be quantified by Western science, then you're getting into some pretty hazy areas. Hopefully that's more accepted now.
Yeah. Well, one thing that science does not confirm, and let me play this little video clip here, is the personal experience. That person that says, I know, well, like I said, when I sometimes walk into a restaurant or a public place and I know that I'm going to see somebody that I know, and I just turn in, there they are. Like you were saying, I mean, they started out with all this scientific, and they wanted evidence, they wanted video, they wanted pictures, they wanted recordings, and they would just use anyone's personal experience as, an excuse to go get evidence. When that to me, that's the evidence right there.
Right. And you have to think about people who have had personal experiences who may say, it only happened to me once, but this weird thing happened, or it was a gut feeling, or it was a knowing. I just knew I shouldn't get in that car. And that stands out in the whole timeline of their life. It's got a big flashing light around it as this strange experience that was anomalous and never happened again. Because we're so taught to dismiss this stuff because it's not quantifiable and it's not scientific. But I just don't know how you would go on an investigation without a psychic or a sensitive, because it would be like going to a foreign country where you hadn't learned to speak the language. You could go, you could have a marvelous time, you could take lots of pictures and videos and immerse yourself in the culture, and it would be a wonderful experience. But if you can't talk to anybody to add context to your experience, what do you have? And the investigative teams have done fantastic work. Just the fact that investigative teams were willing to take people seriously, because that's what I find all the time when I was writing my books. It was so affecting to me that the people I would speak with would always say, I don't want you to think I'm crazy. Please don't think I'm crazy. And it was so, I thought, I don't. And just to have someone not laugh at them and to take them seriously. Now, I think things are a little different now, but when I was writing, it was a big deal. So for investigative teams to show up and take them seriously and to try to get some backup for them to say, yes, you're not crazy. Something's going on here that we're not sure what it is, but we can tell you something's going on. And the ability for fresh eyes to come in and debunk things that were natural events, and to be able to say, here's an explanation. That's tremendous work for people who are in situations they never expected to be in and that they find really difficult and alarming. But then you gotta move past that, in my experience, because there's never a random paranormal event. If you were in a house where there's a lot of ghost stuff and a lot of paranormal stuff going on, it's bigger. It's not random. There's a reason that you are tuning into it and experiencing it. It's meant to teach you or to direct your attention towards something in your life as well.
Right. And that's, I like what you said there. You don't see why any team would go in without a psychic medium or a sensitive. I mean, now that I'm learning all this, I tend to agree with you, I mean, not that I go on ghost hunts that often, but I think the problem with ghost hunting teams is that they have seen the what's the word, overly dramatic, or the frauds, or the people who are making themselves something they're not. And I actually had one member of a ghost hunting team tell me here recently that they're just skeptic of the sensitives, psychic mediums, empaths. And I mean, that was kind of ironic coming from somebody who's on a ghost hunting team, that they're skeptic of.
Well, you have to be, I mean, skeptic. Are you skeptical, or are you using discernment? Because I can tell you, if you're going to be, using these abilities as your, in your life, if it's normal for you, the biggest thing to learn is discernment. That's a really fine subset. When you embrace this and say, I'm going to develop my skills, you have to learn discernment. You have to learn things like learning, is it my ego talking, or is it actually my intuition, my sensitivity? Am I dialing into something outside of myself, or is it my ego? So there's things like that you have to learn. And I do think that it keeps people from addressing their own or acknowledging their own gifts, because they see psychics on TV who are so dramatic and who make it look so easy, and who make it look like they're just beset with visions and voices clear as a bell all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't find that to be the reality. To me, it is so much more subtle, and so you have to learn to work with it and develop it. And it's not like just being gobsmacked out of the ethers all the time. Maybe some people are like that, and that's awesome. God bless them. But I think for regular, normal people trying to live with one foot in each world, it comes on a lot. It's more gentle.
Well, I think along those lines, I'm definitely a fan of many of these paranormal shows. The shows that I like and really have the most respect for are those shows where you do have that balance between the psychic and the people who are coming in and looking at it from a more scientific point of view. A show like Dead Files, where you have Amy Allen, the psychic, and then you have Steve DeShavi, the detective. And they both feed off each other, and there is that balance that is maintained. Kindred Spirits does the same thing. They will bring in Chip Coffey and have him provide his view of the situation, but they also the investigators have their own sensitivities, and they
Mhm.
don't shy away from that. They will say, you know, this room doesn't make me feel good. Let's see if we can figure out why.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, you have a show like the British show with Derek Acora, who, I mean, that was just really more based around his ego. And
There's some whistleblower stories about that show.
oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that's a type of show I can watch. I really cannot sit there and just be totally enthralled in it. I usually will just put it on and let it play in the background. And occasionally, when people start yelling, I'll look up and see what's going on. But for the most part, that show it's really kind of fake. Or and Ghost Adventures, in a way,
Yeah.
being that, you know, they don't really deal much with the sensitivity side. It's mostly, let's just go in and see what kind of evidence we can stir
Yeah.
up.
Right.
Well, one thing that I've noticed, and I think it's happening more and more in these ghost hunting teams. There is a local ghost hunting team, and I won't call their name, and I'm not putting them down. I'm actually applauding them. I just don't want to mention them without their permission. But they're led by a psychic medium, and there's about 8 or 10 people on the team, and they actually do a YouTube show and a local broadcast TV show of their investigations. But that's their lead investigator is a psychic medium, and then you have your tech people and all the other different team members. And then of course, Elizabeth, we've talked about this before, but you were doing that with James Rossier for a while. You were the psychic medium for that team.
We didn't do a lot of stuff, and he's really careful about what he takes on and what he has time,
Right.
life and schedules and stuff. But I can tell you, one of the things I really liked about his approach was when he would go in and work someplace, he could intuitively understand that when you go in, you might get a big burst of activity, it might simmer down, you might get another blip, and then it's over. And he could feel it. So there was no camping out for 6 or 8 hours overnight. He could go in and get the read on when we're going to have a lot of activity and when we're going to actually be able to capture some tech. So that was and I think a lot of really good investigators develop that. Even if they don't consider themselves sensitives or psychics, they develop a sense simply by putting themselves in those kind of experiences over and over again and learning what it feels like. And they begin to develop their sensitivity.
It's like when I would go squirrel hunting as a kid, teenager. We'd start out, my dad would say, sit down next to that tree and stay right there. And then he'd walk off some other part of the wood, and I'm just sitting there with my gun, just freezing my butt off and just waiting for something to happen until, then I got to be a teenager where I was going out by myself, and I'm like, forget that. I ain't sitting here freezing. I'm going to walk. And that's when I began getting more squirrels when I was actually hunting them. I was hunting them. I wasn't waiting for them. My dad, I'm sure, did that for my protection, so that I didn't walk around a tree and he'd think I was a squirrel. You just stay right there so nobody shoots you, kind of thing. But I understand that, because I'm the same way, even when it comes to EVP sessions, when I first started, I'd turn on the EVP or the recorder at the beginning of the night's investigation and wouldn't turn it off till we got through. And then I'm up all night listening to a 4 or 5 hour long recording. And I'm like, no, we're not going to, I'd turn on my recorder, ask a few questions, let it sit a minute, and then turn it off. Go to another location, turn it on, ask a few questions, wait a minute, turn it off. And I like that about James. James, the one investigation I went on with him, he gets some activity. I mean, that he's just, I think he is a sensitive, because the thing with the flashcards blew my mind.
Right.
You know, when there's a blue block on the flashcard, he throws it down and the spirit box speaks up blue. You're like, what?
Right.
How?
And that's a great way of using both, of expanding your techniques, using kind of
Yeah.
some scientific, kind of
Mhm.
really, really basic, rational, scientific experiments while dovetailing in with spirit voices
Exactly.
or mediums or stuff. Yeah. So as like Lewis said, the balance, you're trying to flesh out the whole picture. So you need that balance to put everything together. And if you're gonna help homeowners or people that have a property that is
Mhm.
has ghost, why are you going there? This is what I don't understand. Why do you go there just to indulge your hobby or interest?
Yeah.
Aren't you going there to help people? People need help.
Yeah.
And a lot of the old style investigative teams, they wouldn't, they were just there to gather data, and then they would say, well, you're officially haunted. We've dubbed you haunted. Bye.
Yeah.
That didn't help.
Well, my friend Al Luna, that has the paranormal spirit encounter investigations in Toledo, that is their purpose, is helping folks that need. I mean, at first that sounds like, oh, we're the Ghostbusters and we're going to come in here and zap all the ghosts and get them out. But that's not what Al does. He works with a psychic medium, and he also has a priest or a minister on his team, and a psychologist, I believe, and they go in to help the family that's having these manifestations.
Right.
And their goal is the family, not to get orbs. I mean, he's got a lot of orb pictures, but that's not their goal. Is not evidence. Their goal is helping the family.
Right.
And speaking of, I mean, the whole purpose of this show was to show the advantage of these sensitives in a ghost hunting situation. Now, I mean, we could go on for days on how to let this affect our lives and our day to day and that kind of thing. But the focus of this show was, did you hear that? Our ghost hunting theme, and we want to talk about. I mean, we've touched on it already, and I'm not saying we haven't. We've already gone through a lot here, but as the way my brain works, I sat down and I mean, y'all know, I have an outline for every show. I have a plan. And when I was thinking about these sensitives in regards to ghost hunting, I thought of three things: preparation, investigation, and examination. Preparation to determine if there's any specific direction the investigation needs to focus. And we can talk about these in detail. I just want to get them out here. During the investigation, whether on site or remote, giving insight during the investigation time. And then the examination, looking over the previous investigation and giving advice and insight into what may have been found and then what to do with that information. So, Elizabeth, what do you do to prepare for an investigation?
I do. I never want to know when I help someone, if it's an investigation or if it's a personal job, or not job, but a homeowner personally. I want to know really as little as possible. And I want to, I'll do trancing, meditative techniques and trancing and remote viewing, not to spy on anybody, but because I can go to a location and I can see hot spots, I can feel energy, I can tell where stuff is happening, where it's concentrated. I can see if there's energy that needs to be moved. I can see if there's something negative. I can do that a lot with trance work. I can begin picking up on insights and understandings about what's going on. And then when I also will use the cards to do readings. Tell me what's going on. The cards are just a tool, another tool to help you focus and give you a place to put your attention. The cards are an interactive tool. They're not in themselves anything magical,
Right.
Until you combine them with a person, with a human.
Yeah.
So I do that, and I get pages and pages of notes and stuff, and that helps me feel prepared. So exactly for that, Tom. So I know when I walk in there, I think there's something going on in this bedroom. I think there's an entity here that's having this problem. I can go in, and rather than just saying, I don't know what's going on, I can dial in to what I've already started to get clues about. So I walk in prepared to jump in instead of having to take in the whole thing upon arrival as all new information.
Well, I'm like you. I don't mind knowing the history of a place, but I don't want to know what manifestations they've had.
Right.
That's just me.
I would be curious how, when you're starting to tap into this, how do you know you're tapping into the right location?
Because I go there deliberately. That's part of what I've learned how to do. I worked with a homeowner earlier this week, and I said, just send me a picture of the house. I just want to see the picture. And that gives me, I knew generally where it was, and I knew what in that, it's just part of training. It's just part of practicing over and over again to get into that state of consciousness and to project yourself over, and it's intent. Intent is such a huge thing. Just wander around saying, I hope my intuition will take me to the right house. I have an intent to go there. This is my job. This is what I want to do. And my intent is to help. So all of that funnels in like a GPS and takes me to that area of energy that I'm trying to get to.
That's good.
Now, also along those lines, when you look at a photograph, how do you get much of a sense from simply a photograph? I mean, if, for instance, you look at a supposed ghost photograph, do you have the sense to be able to say this is authentic or this is just someone seeing something?
Oh, I'm terrible. I'm really mean. I'm so mean. Like the village well with the creature in it. I'm like, there ain't no creature in that village well. They cut that. That ain't no well. I mean, I'm really mean about that. When you show me ghost photos and things like that, it better be a damn good ghost photo, because I really understand how easy it is to see things in photos, and how our brains will matrix stuff and all that.
Pareidolia.
So I'm careful with it, but I can pick up stuff from photos, and I can look at photos of places and know if they're haunted or what's going on. I can pick stuff up, but I don't do it all the time, like walk through my life, constantly with the radar going. It's when I'm going to do that, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this now. This is where my attention is focused, and I am deliberate about my process and how I do it, so that I tune in and point my satellite dish in the right way. And that's what I'm doing right now. This is what I'm focused on, and I access and work to get my headspace right, so that I can pick up the frequency and vibration, and to be able to do the work.
And so you do turn it on and off through intent.
I do, because and that was kind of a weird gift of the way I grew up, and it was not acceptable to be weird. So I shut it down because I so desperately wanted to be normal. And so I shut it down because it wasn't okay, and it was not okay. So I shut it down, and I've had to learn many, many years later, when I could not live like a normal person, and I had to be myself. I had to learn to open that back up. And so now, actually, the gift of that in reverse is that I'm really good about shutting it down.
Well, wouldn't you need to be?
Yeah, you do. All that crap that you see, all the stuff you see on TV where the professional psychic walks into the deli to buy a pound of mortadella and some Swiss cheese, and they're like, oh, there's spirit here. Oh my God. Oh, and they get all twitchy and they're like, I have a message for you. And no medium that I know would consider that ethical.
Right.
And no medium I know would consider that a healthy way to live, to walk around open like that all the time.
That's good.
Can't do that.
Well, I just always imagined, one of these psychics going to, like Williamsburg and, constantly being, buffeted by all of these spirits and not really being able to do much actual sightseeing.
Well, you
just
do it
being
intently.
distracted.
Yeah, that would be your intent. If you wanted to do that, to go into a heavy place like that and open up, you can. And also sometimes when you get really tired or you get really relaxed or you're doing a repetitive task, like for me, washing dishes or ironing or doing something like that, that's repetitive, and you kind of get into a lull, and then
zone out,
and then they'll like slip in and start, wanting to talk to you, or something starts popping in, because you've gotten into a sort of a meditative state. Yeah. People do that when driving a lot too, driving long stretches on the interstate. Yeah. So it'll slip in sometimes.
Well, Elizabeth, when you're on site at an investigation, is there anything specific that you do during an investigation?
It's tough you need to be able to trust the people that you're with. And if I do more personal work than I do investigations.
Right.
So if I show up someplace, I really need to have someone with me, because you come in, I do some protective work just simply to just hold my boundaries, just so that I can work.
Right.
Not because I think something nasty is going to jump on me, but just to hold my space so I can work. So you go in and because you do have to open up and begin to perceive stuff. You do have to be vulnerable. It's a vulnerable thing. And you need someone there that you trust that can kind of keep an eye out. And you go through and you're very open and you're picking stuff up. And it really works best when you make a good connection with a homeowner or a person who is affected by the hauntings. Mm-hmm. And you kind of link up. You're making like a link with them. And the better link that you make with them, the more you complete kind of this energetic circuit where you're pulling in a lot of information. If you walk in and someone's just there to test you or they're like, prove it to me, it's a terrible connection. It's not good. Yeah. So you go in and you open up and you try to do good work and you try to help people. And then when you're done, you shut down and you close it and you finish, And everybody has their own process for doing that in accordance with their belief system and their culture, like we talked about earlier.
Right. Well, like we've said before, leaving an investigation, you want to borrow the term from the Catholics, to shrive yourself so that anything there doesn't follow you home. Some people say the Lord's Prayer. Some people have a circle prayer. Some people have, blessings and whatever, As far as after an investigation, is there anything that, when you're looking back over the investigation, that a psychic medium would need to focus on?
No, not if you've come to a successful resolution. If you've helped somebody and they're in a better place and life just rolls on. You always hope to leave it like that.
Yeah, let me rephrase that, because again, this is all new, as far as working with psychic mediums and investigations, and we think beginning, middle, and end. Mm-hmm. As you're working with these folks, and for whatever thing, are you able to give them some kind of advice, direction? Is that part of the process?
It's a huge part of the process. It's huge. It's like you hand it off. You hand it off to them.
Right.
You come in and you try to bring help to the situation and kind of get it sorted out. Mm-hmm. But it's up to them. It's up to them to go forward if you they have to do their part.
Right.
They can't keep looking for if they maybe they've had a disturbance and you've been able to move something on or shift the energy. They can't maintain that mindset of every noise they hear, every creak on the stairs, that they're constantly looking for it and trying to engage with it. They have to stop, because people in a haunted or energetically disrupted location can develop a relationship in their efforts to understand what's happening in their lives, kind of can develop a relationship with the disruptive energy. And they have to stop that. They have to stop that, and that engaging in that. So, because you can bring it back, you can have a place that's really disrupted, and a medium or a spiritual person can go in there and kind of get it all put back together. But if the homeowner then invites it back in, what can you do?
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, we have a question from a YouTube viewer. Is it possible for spoken word and intent to help ward spirits? I feel like I'm sensitive and I'm always trying to ward myself from new spirits. That's from Simply Chaotic. What do you think, Elizabeth?
Well, I think that's typical. That's really tough for people who are coming to terms with the fact that they might be sensitive. And it is a matter of holding your own boundary. And I like to think of it not as trying to keep nasty things out, but trying to keep your own, you're curating your energy. It's in the same way that you lock your front door. You're not expecting anything nasty to come in, but you're going to, appropriately ward or hold your own space. So I like to do warding through really positive things. It works better, in my experience, to come into it with a positive mindset. And your brain and your intent, just as this person is saying, your brain and your intent is amazingly powerful. So if you get a visual image, if you're a visual person and you get an image of some boundary around you, people talk about a big, giant, beautiful soap bubble. If you can see a beautiful bubble and you step into it, and your intent is that this is holding your boundary and keeping your energy clean and high so that you can do good work in the world. You can do that. If you hear it and you want to instead hear yourself being surrounded by wind chimes, and you imagine wind chimes and you're around you. If you feel it and you want to feel like you're pulling a beautiful soft blanket around yourself or a cloak, the best way to hold your boundary is to personalize it to your what works best for you. Do you see, do you feel, do you hear? And make your boundary work around that. And your intent is not to be fearful, but to be totally closed up in your boundary so that your energy can stay at the level you want it to stay. You're curating it and keeping your energy high. And absolutely intent and visualization and imagination, absolutely that works. It's like I wrote about on a post on my Facebook page. People say, oh, I don't know, how can non-physical energy, how can it be so real to work with? And I would direct you back to dreams that you've had that have felt so real. Everybody's had that dream where they've woken and said, I can't believe that was a dream. It was so real. But that was a non-physical, energetic experience, right? So the same part of your brain that works with dreams and dream imagery is the part of your brain that governs your imagination. So you can absolutely, with your intent and with your visualization and imagination, you can curate your world and hold your boundaries so that you can be comfortable and do good work, not because you're afraid and want to feel safe, but reframe that to, this is where I feel wonderful and comfortable and I can do good work.
That's excellent.
I hope that answers the question. There's some really good books I wanted to mention at some point.
Yes, go ahead.
For people who are really new to this stuff and they're like, wow, I don't even know what you're talking about. Echo Bodine, A Still Small Voice by Echo Bodine.
Is that
I think that's not Echo's book. That's
oops, sorry.
No problem. No problem.
Right.
It's a common title.
Yeah.
That's one of them. Heidi Sawyer's Intelligent Guide to the Sixth Sense is fantastic. And then Echo Bodine, she's a very famous and well-known psychic. She's a healer. She's tremendous. And she has a book called A Still Small Voice that I think is wonderful. Both of those are terrific entries into understanding if you're just a regular normal person and you think you've got some of this going on. Both those books are tremendously good to help folks get their arms around what's going on.
All right. So if I'm trying to find a picture of it real quick because I thought I had it. I'm sorry. I was trying to get it.
No problem.
So if how would somebody? We're going to start winding it down here. How would somebody know if they are a sensitive? I mean, how would you? If somebody comes to you and say, "Am I sensitive?" How would you walk them through that?
I think you need to start by going back and looking at how much of your life would you write off as saying, that was weird. How many sentences do you start with saying, this weird thing happened to me, this odd thing happened to me? How many of those occurrences do you have? And begin looking at what were the circumstances around them, and then look at your operating. How do you operate in the world? Tom, you talked about being a visual person and being a highly auditory person with your music. Other people are like super sane and like to break things down analytically. Other people feel stuff. They like to feel it, or they need to hear it a lot if they're learning. So look at your how you operate, and then begin relating things to that. If you are really super sane and rational and analytical and you like process, when you're doing that, do you have stuff pop up in your head? Do you have great ideas just pop in your head, or inspirations or intuitions about how to do something when you're working in that framework? If you're a super feely person, do you get feelings about environments and places? And are you talking about, I had a gut feeling, I just had a feeling, or back to the thinking people, I knew I shouldn't do that. I just knew it. Begin looking at your evidence that you already have, where you're already working with this heightened sense in whatever way is most appropriate to you, whatever is your operating system. And you can probably go back and begin seeing unusual stuff, weird stuff, out of the box stuff, but also where you knew things, saw things, felt things, had a sense about things that maybe you have just always dismissed or not taken seriously. Maybe you need to go back and look at those experiences and take them a little more seriously, because they might be extremely helpful in your life and how you conduct your interactions and relationships and work and everything. It's all there to help you, even if you're not going to be a medium who goes in and works with ghost problems.
Excellent. All right. Now, as we close it out, I hope this has helped. I hope this may have brought clarification and to Simply Chaotic and others who may be watching. And if you have any questions, you can still contact us, or you can get with Elizabeth. Here's her Facebook page. Where'd it go? There. Mobile Ghost and Haunted Mobile. And she is, I think are you finishing up your series on what do you want to know about ghosts?
Oh, no, I think I'm only about, some people may not take this as good news, but I'm only halfway through.
Excellent.
And I am open to questions if I've left anything out.
All right.
It is quite an excellent series.
It is.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We even mentioned something. Tim and I talked a little. I mentioned it a little bit during the last show 2 weeks ago, because she had just talked about. All right, crap. My mind's going blank now. The Indian burial ground thing, where people want to go there first. This has had to have been a Indian burial ground. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, not every place was an Indian burial ground.
Right.
So like I heard one professor say, Indians may have been spiritual, but they were people. They didn't live their lives based around their burial ground. I mean,
Right.
it was sacred like it is to us, but it wasn't anything special. All right, Lewis, any final thoughts?
Well, I just want to thank Elizabeth for her excellent insights. And
Thank you.
I really like that you stressed that having that balance in a paranormal investigation. I think that's incredibly important.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree.
All right. Thank you, Lewis. Oh, by the way.
Oh.
Ta-da! Make sure you get Lewis's book, Haunted Alabama. A gazetteer to ghost lore, legends, and haunted places in the heart of Dixie. Elizabeth, final thoughts.
Oh, I just want to emphasize how normal it is to have these sensitivities and these feelings. And please don't let what you see on TV, where it's hyper dramatic, run you off from exploring your own talents and gifts, because they're all there to help you and to help you live your life better and to help you help other people. So don't be afraid of them. Take a look at them.
Exactly. And like I started the show with, these are people. These are real people. They have ups and downs and good days and bad days, just like everybody else. And I mean, Elizabeth is special, but Elizabeth is a real person.
Well, I'm not any more special than anybody else. That's the truth. And absolutely, it's true that you have good days and bad days when you're doing this work. And sometimes, man, you're really right on it. And then other times you're just like, I don't know what the hell happened. So, but it's worth exploring. It certainly has been for me, been something worth exploring.
Well, I mean, but that was exactly my point. They're not comic book. They're not TV psychics. They're real people.
Right.
And they should be respected as real people. And if you have a psychic medium on your team, they're a valid member of your team. They're not a tool to be used. And one thing I wanted to say is, if you're on an investigation with a sensitive like this, there may be times that they just have to get out of the building, or rest, take a break, because they're going to carry the most extreme part of the load of any paranormal situations, because they are sensitive and because they've walked in there opening themselves up. You've heard Elizabeth talk about that already. So please remember that what is their strength is also their weakness, from what I'm picking up. Because they open themselves up, they can get worn down a lot quicker. So like we were talking about with James Ross here, you may not, have to be there all night, 8 and 10 hours. A couple of hours may be all that they need. And if you're on a team with a psychic medium and you're not that psychic medium, try to limit your personal emotional baggage. Why? Because what we've just mentioned, they're already opening themselves up. And if you bring all this turmoil and emotional crap with you, you're throwing it on them, because they're going to be drawn to that. That's what they do. So you don't want to distract or hinder them, especially if they're strong on the empathic side, because they're going to be drawn to the strongest need in the room. So please remember that if you're on an investigation with them. And I just wanted to say that I'm honored to have a few friends that are strong in these gifts, and I respect their abilities. So if you have a team that needs someone with these qualities, please reach out to us, and we can direct you to some that may be able to help. So we thank you so much for being a watcher today. We thank the watchers. Where'd they go? Thank you, watchers, for being here. And I just wanted to remind you, again, we talked about at the beginning of the show. In 1 week, we have SJ Revisited, Strange Journeys Revisited, and we're going into our second Personnel Paranormal show, where the remainder of the team at that time shares their most poignant show experience with the paranormal. And then a week after that, 2 weeks from now, our next live show, this is going to be, we're returning to an axe murderer, but it's going to be the Axe, Jack, and Holmes. Could there be a relationship between the axe murderers in Texas, and then followed on the heels of that, when those murders stopped, Jack the Ripper picked up in London, and then when those ended, H.H. Holmes began his career. Are they connected? Are they related? We're going to talk about that. Is there anyone here with us? Did you hear that? Can you tell us your name? All right, guys. 1 week, Strange Journey Revisited. 2 weeks, the Axe, Jack, and Holmes. Elizabeth, thank you so much. This was awesome.
My pleasure.
And Simply Chaotic said, please continue to stay safe, Mrs. Elizabeth.
Thank you.
And Simply Chaotic, I hope you've subscribed to her channel as well. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Lewis, thanks again, buddy. It's always an awesome time when you're here. You were amazing.
Thank you for having me.
We will see you in 2 weeks, but we'll be back on the air in 1 week. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.